For me.
The following is a presentation of Sertoba Media and Comey Media Incorporated.
And now the win or go home season begins now for the NFL. Who made it, who didn't, and what's to come on Wildcard Weekend. All of that is coming up next on episode 71 of Total Football Talk. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome back to Total Football Talk. Hard-hitting, grand action, news, and fun, just the way you like it. I'm one of the hosts of this program, Cole Johnson, a.k.a. the Mad Scientist and the EP of our EPs. And I will be joined by the other co-hosts of this program. Unfortunate technical difficulties have us not being here now, but we will meet later on. And once he does get here, he will get the proper introduction, as he will deserve so. All right, let's get down to it, shall we? Week 18 of the NFL will be covered in full right now in Opening Drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On two, on two, on two. Ready? Ready!
No buys, no other shenanigans. No other team played on a Thursday. It is
All 32 teams and 16 games were played this Saturday or Sunday. It was only 2 for Saturday and 1 for Sunday. Let's get to it right away, shall we? Let's get to the Saturday games. All right, so as you have noticed, the weekend began with the NFL wanting to settle matters with the AFC North, which is understandable. I mean, the division was competitive, well, chiefly amongst them. Between the Ravens and the Steelers, they were battling to see who was going to be AFC North's supreme being. Of course, we now know who it is. We're about to get to it in a second. But there was also another team that was battling for a playoff spot, not necessarily for a divisional crown, but they wanted a piece of the playoff. We'll get to that in the next game. But the Baltimore Ravens, they came into their last game of the season Saturday, needing a win, and if they won, they clinched not only the third seed, obviously, but the AFC North. And they did so in rather dominating fashion, getting revenge on the Browns, who beat them earlier in the year, 35-10. Now, Lamar Jackson did not have a stellar game. It was 16-32, 217 yards. He did not turn the ball over, no fumbles, no interceptions. 2 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 9 times for 63 yards. Derrick Henry, to me, was the story of this game. 20 carries, 138 yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had 2 receptions of 23 yards. Notice the 138 yards. Because of that, he now is the oldest player. He's the first player 30 and above to notch over 1,800 yards rushing in the season since Tiki Barber, and that's almost 20 years ago. And Henry got to 1,900 yards on the season. So to me, in my estimation, although the Ravens disagree with me, Derrick Henry is the Ravens MVP. They would not get to where they were without him, and Jackson would not have the season he had without him. But I'll get off my soapbox now. I digress. On defense, Nate Wiggins, he gave you a pick 6 from 26 yards. And the big man, Michael Pierce, big fella, got a pick. And that pretty much sealed the whole game in general. Bailey Zappi, I think this is the only thing to really report for the Browns. 16-31, 170 yards, a touchdown and 2 picks. Dorian Thompson-Robinson did make an appearance in the game, but it really was spotty, and it really is not meant to mention. Zappi also had 2 carries for 2 yards. Yes, the same Bailey Zappi who used to play for the Patriots. Yes, he now is currently is on the Browns. But yes, the Browns, they finished their season at a woeful, 3-14. 12-5 is how the Ravens finish, but more importantly for them, they finish as AFC North champions. So congratulations to Ravens. They cinched up the AFC North. They are the number 3 seed, and they will play the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, we'll get to that later, but the Steelers taking the field, knowing that they cannot win the AFC North, but they could cinch the number 5 seed and at the same time knock out divisional rival Cincinnati Bengals with one fell swoop. The only problem was, for some reason, the offense this game did not get the memo. 19-17, the Bengals, fighting for their playoff lives, stayed alive and beat the Steelers in Acrisure on the shores of the Monongahela, the Allegheny, and the Ohio. Joe Burrow, with very little running to help him, 37-46, 277 yards. He had a touchdown. He had a pick. He was getting beat down all game long as well. He also had a carry for -1 yard. Of course, that was the victory formation carry. Jamar Chase, he was the standout. 10 receptions, 96 yards on a touchdown. I'll get to both Burrow and Chase a little bit later. The Bengals defense, 8 quarterback hits and 4 sacks. But Trey Hendrickson, he was the stud. 3 tackles for losses, 5 quarterback hits, and not 1, not 2, not 3, but 3.5 sacks on the game. In a game where the Bengals needed it, Hendrickson played one of the best games of his career. And it just goes to show that this guy is one of the premier players in the NFL. And he just might win Defensive Player of the Year because of this game. And for the year, because he now has, I believe, 17.5 sacks on the year. But for this game, I think it cinched it, in my opinion. Cade York, he gave you 4 field goals and 4 attempts. And then you have Russell Wilson on the other side of things for the Steelers, who started off red hot, but has been ice cold. Going 17-31, 148 yards, and a touchdown. He had 4 carries, 16 yards, but he had a lot of help in the ice coldness. Take, for instance, Pat Freiermuth. Now, Now, he was the most reliable pass catcher for Wilson, and he was catching everything right and left and center until when they needed a pass to be caught, and Freiermuth had a post, got to midfield, and the ball just simply slipped through his fingers. Oh, but Freiermuth did get a touchdown earlier in that game. And then you have, of course, George Pickens, who He was targeted 6 times. He dropped 3. And I think he only caught 1. And if I'm mistaken, for no yards. Yee. But the defense really, they tried their best. I mean, they kept the Steelers in it. 4 sacks on the day, and Beanie Bishop Jr. with a key interception to stop a touchdown drive for the Bengals. Otherwise, this game probably would have gone further out of hand. Now, I mentioned Burrow. I mentioned Chase. Burrow threw for the most touchdowns in this season and the most yards. If I'm not mistaken, I think he threw 46 touchdowns this year. He did throw for over 4,900 yards. And he had Jamar Chase. Most receptions in the season, which I think was 126. Most yards in this season, which was over 1,700. And most touchdowns in this season, with 17. The Triple Crown winner in the receiving category for Jamar Chase. They stayed alive, 9-8. The Steelers, they fell to 10-7. And they finished the season on a woeful 4-game losing streak. Oof, wow. Eek. I mean, it's just horrible. It's just horrible. But we'll touch on the Steelers a little later. All right, let's get to the other 14 games, shall we? Sunday. And we'll definitely get to the playmakers' favorite team, the Rams, momentarily. But we'll do the 1 o'clock and all times Eastern games, actually where playmaker resides in Duval. Well, they didn't play this game in Jacksonville, but the Jaguars, they went to Indianapolis to play the Colts, and the game went in overtime. The Colts with a 38-yard Matt Gay field goal. It wrapped up things. The Colts, they finished 8-9 with a 26-23 victory over the Jaguars. The Jaguars, they finished at 4-13. Joe Flacco, 23 of 40, 264 yards and a touchdown. Not really all that impressive, but he did not turn the ball over. So I guess that's the most impressive aspect of it all. As Anthony Richardson, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was still trying to heal from some spasms in his back. Speaking of backs and people carrying large objects on them, Jonathan Taylor, 34 carries, 177 yards and a touchdown. He also had a reception of 3 yards. Now, that 177 yards, Taylor had all of the rushing total for the Colts. Yes, the Colts rushed for 177 yards. Every single last one of them came on the legs on Jonathan Taylor. On defense, Julian Blackman, he gave the Colts a pick, and he picked off one Mac Jones. I did mention Matt Gay earlier, the Colts kicker, 4 or 5 from the field goal variety. But Mac Jones, 20 of 32, 225 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. He also carried the ball 5 times for 17 yards. Brian Thomas Jr. I think we'll be hearing this name even more often as we have this year. The young wide receiver has really shown his wares, and if there were less dynamic offensive performers, you might have heard his name mentioned for offensive player of the year, but offensive rookie year, I'm sorry, but not so much. 7 receptions, 103 yards in this game. And Cam Little, 3 of 3 for field goals with a long of 53 yards. Thank the Lord we don't have to talk about the Jaguars anymore and the Colts anymore, and that is not my bias of AFC South. It's just these two franchises are moribund for the year. In fact, I'll transition this way. To the Colts and the Jaguars, you deserve this big fat stinking. And now to the games that matter. And yes, you're probably going to say to me, Cole, the Texans and Titans did not matter. Okay, to the playoff side of things, no, it did not matter. The Texans, they won the AFC South a month ago. That was all clinched. Uh, they were locked into the 4th seed before they took the field in Kansas City. So, and that was around Christmas, not Christmas Day, but like the weekend before. So yes, Texas had nothing to play for, but the Titans did. A loss and a win by the Patriots, and we'll touch on that on the next game. And somebody will actually be the recipient of the number 1 overall draft pick. Well, the Titans did their part. 23-14 losers to the Texans while donning the Love Your Blue Oilers uniforms and Oil Derrick helmet. CJ Stroud, spot up duty in the beginning, sort of to get his legs warm and I guess build up confidence. 6 of 6, 50 yards and a touchdown. That touchdown went to Nico Collins, who also, after that series, left the game, not for injury, but to heal up and to rest up for next week. Davis Mills had most of the action for the Texans. A quarterback, 12 of 22, 128 yards. He also had 3 carries for 11 yards. And, oh, man, the last carry. His face ate the turf. Gosh. I really do hope that his neck is all right because it looked like his neck was about to just fold like a stack of dimes. Oh, man. Sorry. The player of the game in this one was Dameon Pierce by far. It's not even a question. 19 carries, 176 yards, a touchdown. He had 176 of the 207 rushing yards for the Texans. And Pierce, with 176 yards, 92 of them came on a long romp from their own 8 to the other end zone. Will Levis, the gift that keeps on giving, didn't really give a gift in the way of picks. He was 9 of 17, 175 yards with a touchdown. He also had 4 carries, 8 yards, but he did get the gift in the form of and Mason Rudolph, 7 of 9, 70 yards. He had a carry for 5 yards. All right. I am so glad that the Titans took an L in those wonderful uniforms that either should be in Houston or buried. But Amy Adams Strunk, you have no clue. Keep wearing them, and I hope the Texans keep dominating you while you wear those uniforms. And besides, it makes us remember why we sort of cringe when we see those uniforms. It reminds us of all those playoff L's they gave us. Heifer. Now, I mentioned the next game was important for the Titans. The Patriots took the field. They played the Bills in Foxborough. You had Josh Allen, who sort of had a cup of coffee in the game, and they took him out. And Joe Milton and Mitchell Trubisky mopped up the rest of the way. And mop up is the best way to describe it because the Bills did not put forth that much of an effort. The Patriots beat them 23-16. Joe Milton III, Drake May took the day off. 22-29, 241 yards on the touchdown. He also had 10 carries, 16 yards, and a rushing touchdown. But he also had a lost fumble. The big target for Milton III was Kayshon Boutte. 7 receptions, 117 yards, and a touchdown. Joey Sly, 3 of 3 from field goal range, the long from 50. And I did mention the aforementioned former Bears starting quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, 15 of 21, 101 yards, a touchdown. He also had 4 carries for 12 yards. The most notable thing about this, well, 2 most notable things about this game, again, the Titans, because of the win by the Patriots, that secured, and the Titans lost, it secured them in getting the number 1 overall draft pick in April's draft. And the other, this was the last game Jared Mayo coached as a New England Patriots head coach. After 1 season, he's gone. I'll mention that a little later. Now, to another game that really didn't matter all that much. The Eagles hosted the Giants. It would have probably mattered a little more, and more eyes would have been on the game if Saquon Barkley had the opportunity to get 101 yards to break the single season rushing mark of Eric Dickerson, which has been that for 40 years. But early in the week, the Eagles brain trust said, nah, we ain't doing it. But the Eagles took to the field and still beat the Giants 20-13. Tanner McKee, decent in mop-up duty, 27-41, 269 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries for a yard. And a name that I know my brother and my partner Drew is familiar with, Jahan Dotson. That's the former Commanders wide receiver. Now basically is, back up to the Devontae Smiths and the A.J. Browns of the world. Several receptions, 94 yards in this game. On defense, Sidney Brown, he gave you a pick off of Drew Lock. Before we get to Drew Lock, Jake Elliott, he was 2 of 3 from field goal range. And now we get to Drew Lock, 22 of 29, 138 yards, a touchdown, and that Sidney Brown pick. He also had 2 carries for 3 yards. And the defensive standout of the game in general, that would be Kayvon Thibodeau. He had a tackle for loss. He had 3 quarterback sacks. He had a sack and 3 quarterback hits, and a sack and a half. Well, as I mentioned to my brother Wise, who's a huge Giants fan, I said, well, the Giants did their part. They lost. Unfortunately, they did not get the number 1 overall. They dropped to 3-14. They finished at 3-14. Flip that standing, and that is what the Eagles finished with, 14-3. And they got locked into the number 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. Now, before we continue, let me give some hellos to people. We definitely get to your game playmaker momentarily. Hope everything is good with you. Yes, it is. Anyway, Ryan McCarthy. I know he's happy today because I'll refrain from the harsh joke. The Jets actually won, and we'll get to that a little later. He says, good morning, Cole. Nice to see you back in these streams. Thank you. It's nice to be healthy on these streams. He says, fun fact, the Titans are 0-2 versus the Texans in their Foilers uniform. And I got to thank you for that nickname, Ryan. I love that, Foilers. And Playmaker says, look, the fact y'all won't let go of the pass is why Houston won't win a Super Bowl. Look. How can I put this? The fact you can't let go of that pop guard will mean that. No, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go there. No, I am. The fact you want to let go of that pop guard in front of your face, that means that you won't be winning Mr. Congeniality Awards. Now I feel much better. You can let go of the past. Hush up, you. Now to the other two in the NFC East. We touched on the Giants and the Eagles. We now will touch on the Commanders and the Cowboys. And the Commanders had this to play for. If they were to win this game, not only will they triple their win total from 4 of last year to 12 this year, they will clinch the 6th seed, which means they will not play the Eagles in the wild card round. Well, this was a game the Cowboys controlled, and this was in Arlington. This is a game that the Cowboys controlled for most of it. until the very last drive. The Commanders, with a late game touchdown, they beat the Cowboys 23-19. Jaden Daniels didn't really play all that much and really didn't play all that well, but it didn't matter. He got some time and didn't get injured. 6 of 12, 38 yards. He also carried the ball 4 times for 27. Marcus Mariota had the bulk of the work, 15 of 18, 161 yards and a couple of touchdowns. He also had 5 carries for 56 yards and a rushing touchdown. Trey Lance, on the other side of things, the Cowboys ledger, he was 20 of 34, 244 yards. He also had 6 carries for 26 yards. Rico Dowdle, who tried to, I guess, audition to be the number 1 running back for the future for the Cowboys, 22 carries, 72 yards, and a rushing touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for 12 yards. Jalen Tolbert, 4 receptions for 98 yards. He might be able to jockey for the wide receiver slot opposite CeeDee Lamb. Who knows? On the defensive side of things, Chauncey Golston, tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and a sack and a half. Micah Parsons, 2 tackles for losses, 3 quarterback hits, and 2.5 sacks. The Cowboys defense, they did their thing, or at least they did as much of the things they could until the very last drive. 8 quarterback hits and 6 sacks. And Brandon Aubrey, that long leg, didn't really need a long field goal, but he was accurate. 4 for 4. Well, I want to say I feel for the Cowboys. In fact, I actually do. I do. In fact,
you guys want to hear a fucking story?
It just pains my heart that the Cowboys, we won't see them in the playoffs.
This has been yet another beating a dead horse presentation.
I mean, we won't see ridiculous. We won't hear ridiculous. Well, no, we've been seeing and hearing ridiculousness of this nature 15 minutes after this last game happened.
Ain't nobody calling me, texting me, paging me, asking me, are you still involved? Delete! 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 Delete!
Do I want to see the Cowboys actually advance to the playoffs? Do I want to see Cowboys fan or hear them go ham even when the product is horrible on the field?
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, no, to the no, no.
But enjoy your 7-10 mark, Cowboys fan. That is what the Cowboys finished. And this ends their streak of winning 12 games in the regular season. They had a streak of 3 seasons where they won 12 games and 2 divisional titles in that span. But 7-10 is what you got. But to a team that actually does matter, the Commanders, they do lock down the number 6 seed, and they also have a 12-5 mark for 2024. Congratulations to the Commanders. They went through so much turmoil, so much upheaval, so much change, and so much doubt. And now they have a direction and a course and a course they could chart. So yes, congratulations to the turnaround. And it looks like that journey to relevance is real, and they may be perennial contenders very soon. So congratulations to you, Commanders and Commanders fan. Now, the Packers were crossing their fingers, hoping that the Cowboys would actually beat the Commanders, but they did not. So the Packers, well, they languished in playing on "It Was Cold But Not Really Frozen Tundra of Lambeau Field." And they greeted their most storied arch rival, the Chicago Bears, into town. And this was nip and tuck. I mean, the Bears controlled it for the first half, and then they lost, I guess, some sort of footing around the middle of the third quarter, where the Packers, I guess, woke up. The Packers took a 22-21 lead late in the game, but a field goal with no time remaining put the Bears on top, 24-22, breaking the 10-game losing streak that the Bears were undergoing. Caleb Williams, 21-29, 148 yards, a touchdown, 3 carries, 10 yards, and his fingernails probably painted orange. Who knows? Who cares? I'm going to say it in the honor of my man Snowman, DJ Moore. Actually had a good game. 9 receptions, 86 yards. He also had a carry for 5 yards, but he also had a lost fumble. On the Packers end, Jordan Love, 7 of 12, 69 yards. It looked like he hurt his hand and was pulled. In lieu of Malik Willis, who had a decent game. 10 of 13, 136 yards. He also had a carry for 3 yards. He also had a lost fumble. I did mention that Caleb Williams actually threw a pick. Xavier McKinney, a name that I just kept hearing probably every other Packers game. It's like with every other game I would study with the Packers, Xavier McKinney would have a pick. We had one in this game. And Brandon McManus, 3 of 3 with a long of 55. In fact, that field goal to put them up 22-21, I believe, was from 55. So yes, the Bears, they finish at 5, an embarrassing 5-12. I mean, they started the season 4-2, and they came into this game 4-12. Well, the Packers, they finished their season 11-6, which was actually an improvement because they finished 10-7 last year, so they improved the game. They finished 11-6. 5 games were by 1. 5 losses were by 1 score, and also 5 losses were to NFC North teams. Yikes! All right. Before I continue, Ryan says, "Playmaker, come for the top rope." Yeah, he is coming from the top rope. And doing like let me see, doing like a Chris Benoit, headbutt to the canvas. Sig Diggy, what's up? He says, "Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, good afternoon to you, sir." All the way from Norway. He says, "Washington and Dallas was one wild game, especially in the second half," which is true. Although the first half, it was a field goal duel. Yeah, it was. Trey Lance just showed some promise. Yeah, he's not gonna get a shot though. Playmaker. The Texans better stop celebrating the Titans and worry about the Chargers bolting them out of the playoffs. I got something for your mouth, Playmaker. Stay tuned. Stay tuned, sucker. All right, now let's go to a game where the NFC South would be decided. Now, coming into this game, all the Buccaneers needed was a win at home against the Saints, and they locked down the NFC South. Now, if they lost, which the Falcons were hoping, and they were to win their game at home against the Panthers, well, they would be the NFC South champs. We would touch on the Panthers-Falcons game later. But for the Buccaneers and Saints, the Saints actually controlled this game for about 2.5 quarters. It looked somewhat bleak for them and for Mike Evans. And why? Well, Evans wanted to finish the season with 70 receptions and 1,000 yards. If he did so, he would be $3 million richer. So it didn't look all that great until the fourth quarter, because it seemed like the offense woke up and they took control. They beat the Saints 27-19, and they secured the NFC South Championship. Baker Mayfield, 21 of 32, 221 yards, a touchdown, and a Jordan Howden interception. He also had 9 carries for 68 yards. Bucky Irving with a key touchdown. In fact, it was the touchdown to basically put the nail in the coffin for, I would say, the Saints, but it was more effectively the Falcons. 19 carries, 89 yards, and that touchdown. He also had 2 receptions for -5 yards. The Buccaneers offense, with a little bit of help of Irving, a little bit of help of Mayfield, and a bit of mixture from a couple of others, they pounded the rock for 179 yards. And Mike Evans, let's congratulate this man. 9 receptions, 89 yards. Last reception of 8 yards, putting him over 1,000 yards. Now, the incentive thing out the way, he did make history because he is the second man to have 11 straight 1,000-yard pass-catching receiving seasons. The other, Jerry Rice. Yes. So when you mention Jerry Rice's name, you got to mention Mike Evans's name in terms of glory in that department of sustained success, because this man probably now has secured a first ballot Hall of Fame bid because of it. But let me go on. Jalen McMillan, 5 receptions, 74 yards on the touchdown. He also had a carry for 6. And let's go to the Saints. Spencer Rattler, 26 of 43, 240 yards on the touchdown. He also had a carry for 11. Juwan Johnson, 6 receptions for 80 yards. And Rattler spread the wealth because the Saints offense had 10 different receivers in the game. I already mentioned the Jordan Howard pick of Baker Mayfield. Blake Grupe, he was 4 of 4 for field goals. In fact, he accounted for 12 of the 19 points for 13 of the 19 points for the Saints. So yes, his leg was big. Unfortunately, the Bucs and their hunger were bigger. So congratulations again to the Bucs. The Saints, though, they dropped to 5-12 to end the season. And actually, with that loss and with the upcoming what happened, the Saints embrace the NFC South Sulla. The Buccaneers, they finished the season at 10-7, and they finished NFC South champs. However, their day wasn't done because they weren't locked into their seeding. They were locked into being a division champ, but they could actually be vaulted up. How is that? I'll mention that in a little bit of time. Ryan McCarthy eating popcorn. Playmaker says, whatever, Mr. Ouch. Oh, I'm going to get to that in a second. Playmaker also says the Falcons did a Falcon with not 1, 2, 3, or 4, but 5 laughing, crying emojis. How about them dirty birds? Oh, we'll touch on that a little later. Now, for more Sunday games. This is the 425 games. We'll start with the least interesting, the most insignificant, and the quite frankly most boring one of them all. Sorry. The San Francisco 49ers, they traveled to the desert to play the Cardinals. Neither team had anything to play for. 47-24, and the game really wasn't that close. The 49ers got dominated by the Cardinals. Kyler Murray actually had one of his better games of the season, 25-32, 242 yards and 4 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries for 22. The Cardinals offense, with a mixture of running backs, they pound the rock for 151 yards. On defense, Sean Murphy Bunting, he had a pick. So did Catrell Clark. Both of those came on the arm of Joshua Dobbs, who was 29 of 43, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns to go along with those 2 interceptions. He also had 8 carries of 17 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had a and I'm also glad we are done with this. Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. The 49ers, they finished with 6-11. The Cardinals finished at 8-9. Now let's go from the desert to more desert, but from Arizona's desert to the Nevada's desert, to Vegas, where the Chargers, with a win because of the Steelers doing their thing and losing, they could secure the number 5 seed, and they would go on to play the Houston Texans. A loss, and they'll drop to the number 6 seed, and they would have to travel to Baltimore. Well, the Chargers, they started off slow, but then they grinded the Raiders into the dirt. 34-20 was the final score. The Chargers cruised to this 2-touchdown victory. Justin Herbert, 28 of 36, 346 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 carries for 42 yards. Quentin Johnston. Some of you might know him in a Monday night game that they played at home against the Ravens, where he mightily struggled. I mean, he was looking like George Pickens on the field. Well, he bounced back in this game. Actually bounced back for the regular season in general. But in this game, he was the stud. 13 receptions for 186 yards. Now, Ladd McConkey, who's become probably Justin Herbert's most reliable target, he had 5 receptions for 95 yards. On defense, you had Dion Henley. He gave you a pick of Aiden O'Connell. Cameron Dicker, he had 4 or 5 for the field goals. And mentioning Aiden O'Connell, let's talk about that. The Raiders quarterback was 24 34, 214 yards, 2 touchdowns, and that Henley interception. He also had 4 carries for 13 yards. And Jacoby Byers ended the season pretty well. 9 receptions, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Well, the Raiders, they finished the season at 4-13. Unfortunately, they were one win more than having the number 1 overall. But the Chargers, they finished their season at 11-6, and they traveled to Houston. Now let's go to SoFi and the Rams hosting the Seahawks. Well, I know at the end, the result of this game, you're saying, well, wait a minute. The Seahawks have the same record as the Rams. How did the Rams win the NFC West, but the Seahawks were eliminated from the playoffs? Strength of victory. That's how it happened. But the Rams still had more to play for. They already had the NFC West wrapped. If they win this game, they would be the number 3 seed, and they would host the Commanders. They lose this game, which they did, and they would play the team that lost in the Titanic season finale of the 2024 regular season. The Rams dropped one to the Seahawks inexplicably, 30-25. Geno Smith, 20 of 27, 223 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. He also had 2 carries of 14 yards. Leonard Williams on defense, 4 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. Julian Love, he also had a pick of 1 Jimmy Garoppolo, 27 of 41, 334 yards, 2 touchdowns, that Julian Love interception, 2 carries for 5 yards, and a porn star on his arm. I'm sorry. Jordan Winnington on the receiving duties, 3 receptions, 86 yards. He also had 2 carries for 12. Joshua Carty was busy in this game. He made 4 field goals and 4 attempts. But the Rams had only 1 job. And now they got to cross their fingers and hope that the team that came out of the King of the North battle Sunday night Don't ruin the Rams next Monday night. We'll see. Both teams ended the season 10-7, and the Rams also locked in with a 10-7 team in the Buccaneers. They trade places. So the Buccaneers, they finished the season as the number 3 seed. The Rams finished the season the number 4 seed. But still, congratulations to the Rams. You all play the loser of the Lions Vikings, and we'll touch on that momentarily. Ouch. Oh, Ryan has this news to relay. He says, I picked up Quentin Johnston on a whim in my fantasy football league. He was my second highest performer after Derrick Henry, and I won my league championship. Yeah. Playmaker. We rested our starters. Yeah, so did the Texans. Big deal and big whoop. And you still said, watch out for those Chargers. Oh! Anyway. Now, the biggest focal point of this weekend actually belonged, other than the NFC North being contested, who was going to get the number 7 seed. Now, earlier we talked about the Bengals. They needed to win to stay alive for that bid, and they did. In fact, I'll just go spoiler alert. They got one of the results they wanted. The Dolphins bit the dust to the Jets, 32-20. We'll touch on that game in a little more detail in a sec. Well, why not? I'll touch on it now. Aaron Rodgers, 23 of 36, 274 yards, 4 touchdowns. He did throw a pick. Tyrell Dodson was the beneficiary of said pick. Devontae Adams, 6 receptions, 88 yards, and a touchdown. On the flip side of things, Tyler Huntley, who started in place of Tua Tagovailoa, 25 of 41, 227 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. And those interceptions came in the waiting arms of one Ashton Davis, both of them. He also had 3 carries of 16 yards, and Devon Chan, he also had 11 carries for 121 yards and a rushing touchdown. On defense, Zach Seiler, 4 solo tackles, a tackle for loss, 2 quarterback hits, and a sack and a half. I'm happy for your team, Ryan. You ended on a good note. They finish 5-12, but your off season is going to be extremely busy. If you lived in New York City, and I know you live in the state of New York, but if you lived in New York City, I know you would probably be seeing something printed on the New York Post about the Jets, about their front office, about a certain player, about the executives. It's going to be a zoo this offseason. And I'm not saying that to rub it in or rub salt in wounds. I'm just saying it for fact. And I'm exhausted just thinking about it. However, they finished the season on a winning note, 5-12. Unfortunately, the Dolphins, they finished on an 8-9 losing note. Playmaker. Cole want me to feel bad about being a 4 seed, but he forgot we beat one of those teams that took the other to overtime. Son, the Texans are the 4 seed. We beat the Bills. Do people throw ticker tape parades for that? No. They see that 31-2 butt whooping we took on Christmas Day and say that's the team. Bring them on to L.A. So the Jets should hire Louis Riddick, so says Playmaker. And the Jets fan extraordinaire, Ryan McCarthy, says, look, I'm happy the Jets dropped a 30-burger on the fence to end the season, but they have a lot of work to do in the offseason. A lot of work. Yeah. And I'm serious when I say this, man. It's exhausting thinking about the work that your team has to do in the offseason. Exhausting. And I really feel for any fan of the team because it's going to be an undertaking for them. And hopefully they make sense of what they're going to do with Aaron Rodgers going forward, because that's going to actually free up what they have to do. And hopefully they do make that decision sooner rather than later. CD says, hold the velvet football cake, playmaker. Oh, Lord. Let me go. Lord. And Ryan says, look, it's exhausting being a fan of this team. LOL. On to hockey season. Oh, I'm sorry. That's a Devils fan if you want to know. So on hockey season it is for Ryan, and I don't blame him. I'd say the same thing. And unfortunately, so will the Bengals. They'll be saying the same thing. They got the one result because they got the Dolphins loss. Did they get the Broncos loss they needed against the Chiefs? I think Bishop could say it a lot better than I ever could.
Hell to the no, to the no, 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 no. Hell no, to the no.
They took it on the Chiefs took it on the chin, 38-0. And yes, playmaker, the Chiefs rested their starters. I know. The Broncos played all of theirs, and they needed to play all theirs because they needed this game, and they got it. Bo Nix easily played the best game of his NFL career thus far. 26-29, 323 yards, 4 touchdowns. He also had 7 carries for 47 yards. It may have strengthened his bid for Offensive Rookie of the Year, but I think you and I all know that the war is going to Jaden Daniels, but he did strengthen the talk of it. The Broncos offense, on the strength of Nix's 47 yards and others, they pounded the rock for 158 yards on the ground. Cortland Sutton, who also reached an incentive, I forgot what incentive it had to been, but he reached one, 5 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown. On defense, Nick Bonito, 2 tackles for losses, 2 quarterback hits, and 2 sacks. He led the way as the defense put Wentz to the turf 14 collective times. 9 on quarterback hits, 5 on sacks. And speaking of Mr. Wentz, 10-17, 98 yards, and nothing else to really report about this game. This was a thorough butt whooping. The Broncos came in wanting this game the worst way, and it didn't matter who it was. It didn't matter what the stakes for the other side was. They know they needed to win and get in. They won and they got in. 10-7 is where they finished with. They traveled to Buffalo to play the Bills. The Chiefs, well, they go home. Even with the goose egg, they go home. And they await. And they will not play again until the divisional round. That's what you do when you are the king. Playmaker, bowing up to Buffalo. Lord have mercy. Goodness gracious. And now the game that we waited for. 14-2 Minnesota Vikings. 14-2 Detroit Lions. Which team was going to get their 15th win of the season and become not only the NFC North champion, but the king of the North and the number 1 seed in the National Football Conference? The Lions smelled blood when that missed field goal came off the leg of one real Reichert, and they just went to town on them. They finished the game scoring 21 unanswered points, and they beat the Vikings. It was actually a pretty entertaining game for the first 2.5 quarters, but the Lions controlled it much of the way, but they won it at home 31-9. Jared Goff was 27 of 33, 227 yards. He had a touchdown. He had 2 picks. He was not stellar, He was not stellar at all. In fact, he was uneven, but he was buoyed and he was picked up by that stubborn defense. We'll touch on that a little bit. But Jahmyr Gibbs was the man. 23 carries, 139 yards, and 3 rushing touchdowns, 5 receptions, 31 yards, and a receiving touchdown. The only receiving touchdown that you could have had in this game from Jared Goff's arm. Gibbs contributed 139 to the 152 rushing yards that the Lions offense mustered. And then you have Sam Darnold. Quite easily the worst game of the year for him. 18 of 41, 166 yards, 3 carries, 10 yards. The only plus you could say about Darnold, he did not turn the ball over. That's the only plus you could say about him. Oh, I'm sorry. And those 2 interceptions that Goff threw, one went to Ivan Pace, the other basically Harrison Smith sort of played like a punt returner, and he fair caught the interception as Goff launched it from the end zone, and it got to barely the Viking side of the field. It just went into the winning arms of Harrison Smith. And I mentioned Will Reichert. I mentioned the miss, but he did pretty well for the most part. 3 of 4 from field goal range. 51 yards was the long. Here is the stat to me that really did end the Vikings. 4 trips in the red zone. 0 touchdowns. 2 field goals. And the 2 field goals at the end of 2 of those possessions. The other 2, not a point. And that was the difference in the game. Plus, Justin Jefferson. When would you think you would ever hear this stat line? 3 receptions, 18 yards. Lions offense was really stubborn. Congratulations to the Lions. They are the NFC North champs. They got the number 1 seed. The Vikings, they dropped to the number 5 seed. They finished 14-3, and they go to LA, where they went early this year. And yes, I will say this for you, Playmaker. It was a Thursday night game. They lost 30-20. The Vikings lost 20-30. The Rams won it. And the Rams got away with a face mask on the safety. However, can't let facts get in the way of a good story. 30-20, the Rams beat the Vikings earlier this year. You happy there? Playmaker. Oh no! A 14-3 teams playing the Rams in the wild card round. Run for our lives! It's over.
Ain't nobody care. Who cares? Ain't nobody care.
Now to the and the game of the week. That's right. We're combining these suckers. The upset and game of the week happened to be in Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the homebound Atlanta Falcons and the visiting Carolina Panthers. The Panthers had nothing to play for. The Falcons had plenty to play for. The Falcons were 8-point favorites. That's why this is an upset. And this really was the best game of the weekend because it seemed to carry the most drama in that particular game. The Panthers, they came away with a 44-38 victory in overtime. Bryce Young looked actually really good. 25-34, 251 yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He also had 5 carries, 24 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. This game, ladies and gentlemen, Bryce Young, he had a man of a game as a quarterback. This was the best game of his NFL career thus far. And hopefully he can springboard this to better performances. Miles Sanders, 17 carries, 66 yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had 3 receptions, 50 yards, and a receiving one. On defense, Michael Jackson, Shimon with a pick of Michael Penix Jr., who was 21 and 38, 312 yards. He also had 2 touchdowns with that. Michael Jackson, pick. A carry of 5 yards as well for him. Bijan Robinson, a big-time performance wasted. 28 carries, 170 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He also had 2 receptions for 3. The Falcons offense got busy on the ground with 227 on the ground. Drake London, who was trying to do as much as he could in this game as well, 10 receptions, 187 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Unfortunately, that defense could not match what the offense could provide. So the Panthers, they improved to 5-12, and they actually aren't in the cellar. The Saints are. The Falcons, they dropped to 8-9, and Raheem Morris. I want you to understand something. When you have the opportunity to have your quarterback throw a pass and he completes it to your 45 with 34 seconds to go in the game and it's tied, and you need this game for a victory and you have 2 timeouts, take the timeout. Woosah. That concludes this game of the week. It also concludes the upset of the week. And it also concludes the opening drive.
All right, let's go. We got trips, right? At 42, 989. On 2. Ready? Quick!
But wait, there's more. Where my dogs at? That's right. It's time for the grand champ. And my boy would be here. I won't reveal which of his he chose. I will do that for him. Now, for me, the grand champ of this week, I'll do an honorable mention though. I have to give credit where it's due. Jahmyr Gibbs, your team needed you. And I mean your defense needed you, your quarterback needed you, your offensive line needed you, the receivers needed you. They needed you. And my God, you came up huge. And in a system where you share the rock with David Montgomery, and please recover as fast as you can, David, because he went down with an injury. I forgot what game. I think it was the loss to the Bills. He was the man. 26 carries, 139 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. He also had 31 yards on 5 carries and a receiving touchdown. However, in an effort that was good, but unfortunately it was a little too late, I still got to give it to him. Trey Hendrickson, coming on down, brother. Come on down. You are the champ. You are my champ of this week. 3 solo tackles, 2 of assists. And I mean, he just was the man in this game. I mean, the Bengals needed everything that he could give them, and he gave them everything. 3 tackles for losses, 5 quarterback hits, 3.5 sacks. I mean, this dude was the main reason why the Steelers could not get on track on offense. And he was, I think he was the reason that the Bengals defense actually coalesced too late, but they coalesced. After that Steelers L they took at home, which made them 4-8, it focused that defense. But the thing is, Hendrickson was being a beast all that while. And nobody was mentioning his name. They were mentioning Jamar Chase's name because he was wowing people with his stats, saying it with Joe Burrow, but they were not mentioning Trey Hendrickson's name. We're going to mention him here. 17.5 sacks he finishes with. This dude played lights out on defense, on a defense that I will say was horrible for most of the year. They were good the latter part of the year. They were good from the beginning of December on and now. But before December, that defense was horrible, except him. So congratulations to you, Trey Henderson. You are my grand champ. I'm sorry that it didn't result in a playoff bid and a playoff berth, but it just goes to show you. And I highlighted him for a reason. It goes to show you that you have to play literally until the whistle blows, no matter if the result is you win and you go to the playoffs or you lose and you don't. It's like what Yoda said, you do, there's no try. So you tried your best. You put forth your best effort. You exhausted everything you could, Trey. And that is all we could ask for any athlete to do. And you more than satisfied that quotient. You were a dog, my brother. Keep being a dog, please.
Total Football Talk.
Before I continue, Playmaker says, look, talking about Jahmyr Gibbs. He said, look, for grand champ, Gibbs is the only choice because he went ham. Ham, for those who don't know what ham means, it means hard as a... And here's Playmaker. Oh, no. He says, look, George Pickens is the reason why the Steelers offense couldn't get on track. 3 drops all through both hands. Oh, I'm going to talk about Mr. Pickens very soon. In fact, maybe about another 4 or 5 minutes. But oh, yes, because in that game, Russell Wilson was seeing the turf much of the night. And it was because of him. It was because of Mr. Henderson. Yes, sir. All right, let's try this again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we are in the playoffs. Yes. Now we will preview 5 of the 6 in the wild card round. We'll preview the 6th one next Monday because, well, the Rams hosting the Vikings will take place on the next recording the night of. So we won't touch on that. We will touch on the Saturday and the Sunday games. Saturday, please. All right, so we'll start with how we always start whenever the Texans win the AFC South. Set your clocks to it. The Texans, they'll win the AFC South. They'll be the 4th seed, and they will open wild card round at home. It is set. Put it down. You can put that down in pen. And in this case, that holds true. The Texans, they host the Chargers, the Los Angeles Chargers. Most people were thinking it was going to be the Steelers that was going to come into town. It's the Chargers. As the Steelers went on a 4-game slide, the Chargers kept plotting. They chopped at that wood, and now they ended up being the number 5 seed. So the Texans, they finished the season 10-7 and the AFC South champs. The Chargers, they finished the season 11-6. They were the AFC West runner-up. And CBS Paramount Plus will carry this game 4:30 p.m. Again, all times are Eastern. 4:30 p.m. is when the kickoff will take place. All right, so the feature will be here. Justin Herbert on offense. Justin Herbert. He is the guy. Now, if you're a Chargers fan, you're hoping that J.K. Dobbins can actually tote the rock a little bit. You would love to have Quiston Johnston do what he did against the Raiders, but more Lad McConkey, I think he's going to have to be the guy that's going to have to move the chains for him, and Justin is going to have to move them legs because I think he's going to have to scramble for a few yards sometimes. On defense for them, I mean, yeah, you got Joey Bosa, you got Khalil Mack, but it's hit and miss with them. They have the pass rush, but it sometimes comes and sometimes goes. And you have the secondary, basically led by Derwin James, the all-world safety. So this team has some talent. So it's not like how did this happen? Where I can't believe that the Chargers did this. No, they earned their way. And of course, you got a head coach in Jim Harbaugh who gives a team unbridled belief and the work ethic, because the dude actually works out with them. So it's sort of is the unwritten understanding of, well, if my head coach is going to work that hard, I'm not going to let my head coach outwork me. So you have a team full of guys, and they're young too. You have a team full of guys who do not want to be upstaged by their head coach. And on the flip side, you have another young team. The Texans are young. People don't really say that, but they are, and they do have some veteran pieces. I mean, Laramie Tunsil, who I don't know how in the world that left tackle is in the Pro Bowl. He doesn't deserve it because he led the league in false starts. But I digress. I don't understand it, but it's neither here nor there. Joe Mixon. He's a good talent. That line is not all that great. And Bob Slowick, I don't think he's designing plays well enough for him to really shine. He does well on the road, but at home, not so much. And, to me, the Texans' bread has been buttered on defense. Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson, that tandem. That pass rushing tandem. Hunter with 12 sacks, I think. Anderson had finished the season with 10.5. So they lead with pass rushing. That's obvious. They have their leader in Al Shahir back from that suspension of tattooing Trevor Lawrence on a slide. He basically sort of grounds the linebacker core, and then you have for safeties, well, I should say for secondary, I'm sorry, Derek Stingley. And you also have other young bucks too, but Stingley is the guy right now. He's the guy that sort of is the most talented of them all. And there's others I can name, but I'm not going to waste your time. The key here is, how can the Texas defense make life miserable for Justin Herbert? And on the flip side, how can the Chargers pass rush make life difficult for one CJ Stroud? Because believe it or not, CJ Stroud actually has more playoff games under his belt than Justin Herbert does. In fact, this is Herbert's second playoff game. This will be Stroud's third. So, and I'm not going to go homer here. I have been thoroughly unimpressed with the Texans offense. Thoroughly unimpressed. And the defense has too much weight on their shoulders. They have to not just stop the Chargers. They're going to do like what they did yesterday. They're going to have to actually, if they're going to win this game, the defense is going to actually have to come up with points. They're going to have to actually score touchdowns. And when you actually have to rely on your defense to score, that is problematic. And at this stage in the playoffs, you're playing against too good of teams to where your offense can just simply sputter. The offense has sputtered. The Texans' offense is not all that great. And yes, you can say, well, Cole, I mean, they're without Stephon Diggs, with a knee, and they're without Tank Dell. They won't have Dell in 2026. Yes, true. But even with them in the lineup, that offense was sputtering. It's just sputtered worse. And to me, that's where the game lies. The Texas offense is horrible. The Chargers is not. And the Chargers defense matches up pretty well with the Texas defense. So I got to call it like I said. The Texas offense is the worst unit of them all. And because of that, the Chargers advance. And am I rooting for it? No, but I'm just looking at it through analyst eyes. The Chargers should win this game. They should win this game. They should advance without question. Without question. I said without question.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
Now, Saturday night, the Steelers at 10-7. They go back to Baltimore, and they went to Baltimore last month and took an L. They're going to take another L to the Ravens. The Ravens finished at 12-5. Prime Video will have this game, so yes, you're going to have to go online to watch this. 8 p.m. is the kick. The Steelers, they came into December 10. Well, so they came into mid-December 10-3, and with losses to the Eagles, the Ravens, the Chiefs, and the Bengals, respectively. They went from controlling their own destiny and possibly having a number 3 seed, and they actually had an outside shot at a number 2, to dropping all the way to the number 6 seed and having to play the Ravens a third time this year. Now, what's in the Steelers' favor is the Steelers seem to be the team that Lamar Jackson struggles the most playing against. They seem to know him best. They seem to know how to make him uncomfortable. That's the good news for the Steelers. The bad news for the Steelers is it looked like Mr. Jackson solved them the last time they played in Baltimore, which was last month. And it looks like Lamar is more focused. To me, I don't think Henry's going to go for 100 yards, but I believe it's important that Henry at least gives you 20 carries. At least. Doesn't have to be 400 yards, but he has at least give you 20 carries, because you got to give the look of running. You got to give out the look of running the ball. And if you don't, forget it. Now, the Steelers, they're struggling on offense. I mean, Wilson isn't linking up with George Pickens. I mean, if the dude ain't dropping passes, and this is something else, excuse me, this is something else you didn't mention in a playmaker. If Pickens wasn't dropping passes, he was running crappy routes. Take, for example, the deep shot on the last drive on Saturday. Pickens beat his man. I mean, he beat his man by 5 yards, maybe even 7. And Wilson lobbed the ball up, and it bounced in Pickett's direction, but the ball went the way it was supposed to be, because it was away from all the defenders, but Pickett ran toward other defenders. That right there is the problem of the team. You're having people not doing things one way. They're not in sync, and you can see it. And that's a problem for the Steelers. And what sucks is their defense is awesome. Cam Hayward, awesome on the line. TJ Watt, awesome either on the line or dropping back in coverage. Mika Fitzpatrick, he's probably one of the toughest safeties you can ever have. And the dude can play can play linebacker as a safety. I mean, he is versatile. You got all that talent on defense, and you have a decent offensive line. You have a veteran who at times looks great and at other times looks poor, looks bad. And you have a wide receiving core that they drop passes more than a hoe does at a strip club. You can't afford that. Meanwhile, the Ravens defense is starting to get it together. And they got a beast in Derrick Henry that nobody can stop. I take that back. One team can stop them. That's the Ravens. The Ravens are the only team that can stop Derrick Henry. You can slow him down. You can limit his touches, but you can't stop that big man. But the Ravens are the only team that can. And I think Lamar Jackson will make enough good decisions, and Henry will run the ball just well enough for the Steelers to go home one and done yet again. All right, to Sunday, shall we? All right, so the first two games were AFC tilts. Well, why not the first of the Sunday games be an AFC tilt? That's right. The Broncos, who finished the season at 10-7, they qualified for the playoffs for the first time in 9 years. And yes, that was the last time they won a Super Bowl championship. Well, they traveled to the cold Arctic-like conditions of Western New York. The Buffalo Bills will greet them. Paramount Plus will have this game. 1 p.m. will be the kickoff. This will be in Highmark Stadium. I'm sorry, the previous game will be in Baltimore. The Bills, 13-4. The Broncos, they finished the season at 10-7. I'm going to try to be as positive as I can for the Broncos. The only thing that is in their favor is the fact you have more experience with Sean Payton than you do with Sean McDermott. Sean Payton has won it all as a head coach. He has taken his team to a few NFC championship games. Mind you, he was a coach of the Saints. So he knows what it takes to win playoff games. He's won many of them. McDermott has won many playoff games too, but he hasn't won an AFC championship yet, let alone the Super Bowl. You know, you have Peyton, who's won an NFC championship and a Super Bowl. So that is an advantage that the Broncos do have over the Bills. Maybe their defense. Maybe the Broncos defense is a shade better, a hair better than the Bills defense. Not by much, but a shade. But the rest of those advantages all go to the Bills. I mean, overall talent, Bills. Better pass rusher, Bills. Better receiving core, Bills. Better running back, Bills. And of course, the QB, Bills. So you got one guy who struggled for half the year and feverishly came on to possibly finish number 2 in Offensive Rookie of the Year in Bo Nix. And on the other end, you have a guy who probably will finish second in the MVP balloting and has played lights out in November and early December. And that would be Josh Allen. And to me, that is where the differences start. And you can end the differences right there. And you can end the advantage right there. It's advantage Bills. They're at home to boot. And they're playing a team that has a lot of inexperience at this level. And they are a team with a chock full of experience. Yeah, so this is the game. This is the Bills' game to lose. Without question, without fail. The Bills should advance. This should be a double-digit victory. I'm not saying it's going to be a rout, but it should be a double-digit victory because the Broncos should not be prepared to play against a team that is thoroughly prepared to play in this moment. And they are actually thinking we have bigger fish to fry. So, yeah, other than Sean Payton being an advantage and on the sideline, and maybe overall the team defense of the Broncos being better than the team defense of the Bills, this is the Bills' game to lose. This is the Bills' game to lose. I can't see them losing to I can't see the Bills losing to the Broncos. I really can't.
Hey, who's giving them the business?
Hey, Mick, how you doing? It's good to see you, man. It looks like, technical difficulties with Drew. It's unfortunate. It's good to see you, Mick. And congratulations to your Seahawks, 10-7. I mean, that's how you're supposed to do it. Playmaker says, look, even though you talk about the game next week, Dan Campbell proved us Billboard material if McVay chooses to use it. Look, Playmaker, that's a possibility that either one of your teams can win it, and you ain't gonna be facing the Lions. I mean, to me, it's not nice segue, because to me, it is not a slam dunk that the Bucs are going to beat the Commanders, and it's not a slam dunk to me that the Eagles is going to beat the Packers, which that's the next game we're going to preview. Fox will carry this game. The kickoff will be at 4. Opening kickoff will be at 4:30. 14-3 is what the Eagles finished. They are the NFC East champs. Sorry, the Bills are AFC East champs, and the Ravens are AFC North champs. The Eagles, NFC East champs, 14-3. They finished. The Packers, 11-6 is where they finished, and they finished third in the too tough NFC North. Here's the funny thing. The Packers, they 11-6, they finished, right? 5 of those 6 losses came to the NFC North. They got swept by the Vikings, they got swept by the Lions, and they split with the Bears, which means they were 10-1 the rest of the way. Guess where their lone defeat outside of the NFC North came? That's right. In Brazil, week 1 to the Eagles. So they meet again 4 months later. This time, the Eagles gave up a home game to play them. This time, it is in South Philly. All right, so the key for the Packers. I need to see Josh Jacobs. Don't tease me. I need to see Josh Jacobs. He needs to run the ball. He needs to be a presence in this game. He must show up. There is no denying that. There's no questioning that. You could try to be cute and go to your young wide receivers, to Wicks and to Dobbs and you could do all of that type of junk, but you need to have a steady presence with Josh Jacobs. Why? Because on the other end, the Eagles are going to give it to you with Saquon Barkley. And this is a tried and true method of football. The best defense is an opposing offense. And the best part of the best opposing offense is one that can run the ball. Now, it's a tall order because the Eagles defensively is pretty good all around. I mean, heck, I think we're talking about the best in the league. So it's not going to be easy to run the ball, but they need to show, talking about the Packers, they need to show a penchant to run the ball. They need to show they are not afraid to run the ball. And I think the only way you do it is you just run it right at them. You need to have Josh Jacobs be a battering ram because you got to give Jordan Love time in the pocket. He can do a lot of dynamic things, but you got to give him time in the pocket. I personally think the Eagles can do whatever they want defensively against the Packers, and I think that's where the game is won and lost. I think Hurts can throw it all over him, and I think Barkley can run all over him. The only defense against that is Josh Jacobs running the ball. That's it. That's the only defense against what the Eagles can do. Otherwise, the Eagles are well equipped to beat the Packers. The Packers are not quite as well equipped to beat the Eagles, but they can have some success against them. I just think they won't have much success against them. So I will have the Eagles. I pick the Eagles over the Packers. They will advance, and I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be a good thing. Seeing the Packers actually not be comfortable in wanting to spread the field and throw it downfield. I think LaFleur is going to struggle in that regard, and he's going to have to be at home with trying to pound the rock.
Hey. Who's giving them the business?
All right, the Sunday night tilt. 8 o'clock will be the opening kick. NBC Peacock will carry this game. The Buccaneers are 10-7. They host the Commanders at 12-5. Now, these two teams also met in week 1, just like the Eagles and the Packers did. The Buccaneers had their way 37-20 over the Commanders. And I remember saying to Drew, I said, all right, don't look at the season as strictly win or loss. Measure expectations. Look at it by the development of one Jayden Daniels. And I remember saying that to him, not necessarily to say, well, they probably will win only 5 or 6 games. No, I was saying that to him from the standpoint of, if he develops the way I think he will, this team will be good. He developed the way he developed the way I thought, and the team ended up being good. So now you have a team that, from the ownership group on down to the ball boy, they believe in number 5. This is their guy, and this is their guy of the future, near and distant. This is their franchise quarterback. They haven't had one like that, and although people won't claim he's one, they went to Super Bowl one time and they won the Super Bowl another time with them. This is the first time they've actually had this type of guy since Joe Theismann. And Joe Theismann, we're talking about a guy who played from the mid-70s to mid-80s. So 40 to 45 years. And they've had a run of quarterbacks where you thought, wow, this could actually happen. Look, I love Doug Williams, but you had to put him there. He won a Super Bowl, but he didn't last too long after that. Mark Ribbon won a Super Bowl. He didn't last too long after that. And then you had other quarterbacks that you just don't even want to think about. Then you had Mark Brunell, who was late in his career. And then you had people like Gus Frerotte, who wanted to headbutt walls instead of lead teams to victories. But I digress. And then you struggled. Then you had a franchise savior in Robert Griffin III. Loading out a hit on a knee messed his career up. And then you were feverishly trying to scurry for a QB all the way until right now. And you have your guy. And when you have your quarterback, notice how a franchise settles and they throw their weight behind that guy when they know he is the one who is going to guide the troops. They already know that with Jayden Daniels. And he has some decent talent around him. Zach Ertz is a wonderful safety blanket. You have Terry McLaughlin, who stretches the field. And when he needs a key play, he does go to him often. and there's others I can mention. To me, Brian Robinson Jr. has to be one of the big keys in the backfield. You can throw Rodriguez in there too. They need to have a running presence that isn't starred by Jaden Daniels. He does not need to be the one to run the ball 20 times in this game. I really believe the Buccaneers would want him to do that. The more times he runs the ball, the less it's in the hands of the other playmakers. And that could be problematic for them. So to me, I would love to see Daniels in his mind not try to run the ball often. 10, I'll give him 12. 12 of the most carries for the game. I think as opposed to then when they played him in September, where that was his very first start in the NFL. He didn't really have the trust in the playbook, didn't have the trust of his in his teammates, and didn't have the confidence that he can execute all the plays that's given to him. Now, 18 weeks later, that is a thought that is in the past, because he trusts the playbook, he trusts the players around him, and he makes people better. So you have that. Then on the other side, you have Baker Mayfield. Now, he had a cup of coffee in Cleveland, had a cup of coffee in Carolina, and people were writing him off. People were thinking that he sucked. And it wasn't that he sucked. It was that he never really got a chance to do what he was born to do. He never got a chance to lead a team. And now in Tampa, he has had a chance to truly and properly lead a team. And when you have someone like a Mike Evans, and congratulations to you, Mike, 11th season in a row, 1,000 yards in a season. And you're the second guy to do it in the more than 100-year history of the NFL. Congratulations on that history-making moment. When you have that on one side, it's unfortunate you don't have Chris Godwin on the other. But when you have Mike Evans as a target, it makes life easier. And Mayfield's the type that he can create targets. Cade Otton is a prime example of that. But he's going to have to rely on his playmakers. Evans is one. Bucky Irving is another. He's got to rely on that running back, and he has to rely on that wide receiver. He has to rely on that offensive line, which they have actually grown to be better as the year has gone on. I'm loving what I'm seeing from the offense of the Bucs. The defense is solid. The defense will always be solid. I mean, when you have Bowens as your head coach, defense is not going to be an issue for you. He's going to put pressure. He's going to drop it at Tampa 2, and he's going to have his linebackers fly around everywhere. That's the hallmark of hallmark of Todd Bowens' defense, and this defense is no exception. And they're doing that now. And congratulations again. I think this is their third straight year NFC South champs. So I mean, they're doing it up big, and they got the 3 seed. So yeah, congratulations to you. The key in this game to me. Will the moment be too big for Jaden Daniels? I think that's the only key. The moment won't be too big for Baker Mayfield. He's been there. He's done it. He's won playoff games. His issue is when putting a team on his back and winning a stretch of playoff games. He's won playoff games, so he knows what to do there. So he has the experience advantage over Daniels here. But will the moment be too big for Daniels? That's the only question I have for this game. And I'm going to be surprised. I'm going to surprise you guys. I think the moment won't be. I think Daniels will be prepared, and I think the Bucs, as talented as they are in many different realms and areas, I think the Commanders are that little engine that could. I think they are the team that will surprise people, that will raise eyebrows, that will make people stand up and say, "Whoa, we got to take notice of this team. This wasn't just luck in the regular season." So I think the Commanders are going to come away victors in this game, and it's not shading the NFC South. In fact, I consider the Buccaneers a stronger team than the Falcons, because if the Falcons, I'd say this was a slam dunk. You got two rookie QBs, and I think we're going to see a similar game between the Commanders and the Falcons as we did to end 2024 on Sunday night on ABC. So I see the Commanders coming out with a victory here, and it's going to be a close game. This might be the best game of the weekend, and I think there's a reason why NBC picked this one. This one's going to be exciting. Yeah, but so yeah, I say the Commanders, they'll take a hold of this one, and they'll advance the divisional round, and it will depend on the Packers as to if they face off against the Eagles again or not. But yeah, I see the Commanders actually taking this thing another week. And that concludes
Total Football Talk.
Oh, it may be the new year, but we still are ringing in the snow. That's right. Here is my snowflake of the week. I'm not going to announce what Drew's is. I know what Drew's is, but I'm not going to announce it because I'm going to let him do it. But the snowflake of this week for me. Come on down, Tyreek Hill. Now, I came close to saying this about George Pickens, but when I saw the post game of the Dolphins Jets with him being interviewed, and he had the nerve to opine and say, quote, "The door is open. I'm out of here, man." Close quote. I wanted to throw something at the TV screen. How did I gotta watch it? I gotta be sorry about the snowman. Give me this camera. How dare you, Tyreek? How dare you fix your mouth to say that you're a competitor and that you want out when you had the best situation anybody could possibly have? You were the number one wide receiver target of the quarterback of today on the team that now is a dynasty. And you wanted to run from that because you felt as though you were disrespected and not getting the money that you felt owed. Dude, you're on a championship team. You're on a team where they have to think, okay, how can we move certain assets around and still be a championship quality team? Because we're going to suffer at some point, some juncture, some way, shape, or form, because we're going to have a Tyreek Hill say, look, break me off my money or I'm out of here and I'll find somewhere else where I'll get that money. And now that you realize the situation wasn't all that great, and then you lie to us and say, and I can't believe you fixed your mouth to say that, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that Tua Tagovailoa sucks, but you fixed your mouth to lie and say that Tagovailoa is more accurate than Patrick Mahomes. That's why I draw the line. And then you have the nerve to say that you are a competitor. If you were a competitor, then why didn't you leave KC? Because you would have all the opportunity to compete. Because people were gunning, and people still are gunning for the Chiefs. People were gunning for you. You had defensive backs wanting to test their gangster against you. You had teams that wanted to shut you down, and then when you saw how defenses were trying to shut you down as part of the Chiefs, and then you were upset that Kelsey was getting more looks and then you were getting less. Well, you hitched your wagon to Tua, and you had a wonderful run last year. But this year, it was marred with injuries. It was marred with incidents off the field. And now all of a sudden, you got your money, but you want to compete because you're unhappy with the 8-9 finish. And I know you weren't happy with that 1-and-out. Oh, and the team that knocked you out of the playoffs last year happened to be your old team. You wanted that money. You got that money. And now you're not happy. Good. I'm glad you're not. I'm glad you're not happy. You want to know why I'm glad you're unhappy? Because you can't have your cake and eat it too, from the standpoint of you're the richest or one of the richest paid wide receivers, and you are part of a team that plays deep into January every year. See, the thing is, you could have had that, but you were playing. Sucker.
As long as it's one. It's great. I love it.
All right, now it's time to end this episode with the post game. This is normally where we touch on the week that was and the week that's to come. And here's my post game thoughts. So correct me if I'm wrong. Jerry Mayo was a guy who you, Mr. Robert Kraft, said that he represented the Patriot way and that you were turning the page and you had your eyes on this guy a couple of years before you forced to part ways with Bill Belichick, who people say is the best NFL head coach of all time, chiefly because he has 6 rings. The problem I have is you only gave him 1 year. You only gave him 1 year. And to boot, you gave him 1 year with a team that was horrible. They had little talent of which to speak. You had to get rid of one quarterback you thought was going to be the future to draft another. And people were saying that this guy wasn't, and he's proven otherwise. And then you have your victory in Cincinnati, and you mention it. Week 1, victory against the Bengals in Cincinnati. I thought we were on the right track, and then it all fell. What you expect when you try to win with duct tape and super glue? Your Patriots, Mr. Kraft, is not all that talented. Your Patriots are not all that skilled. Your Patriots are not all that experienced. Yet you expect this guy who was a first-time head coach in his first year with the team as the head coach to sprinkle pixie dust, and you'll take a team that was circling the drain to being an AFC East champion, at least. Because that's what happened last year in Houston. I mean, the team was horrible. It was bad. And they did the same thing you did, Mr. Kraft. They fired not 1, but 2 coaches after 1 year. And I always felt for David Culley because I was like, oh my gosh, you got the carrot dangled in front of you only to be the scapegoat. And that's exactly what happened. Then Lovie Smith came. And people were hot with him because we didn't get the number 1 overall pick. We got the number 2 overall pick, but it didn't matter. We got the guy of the future in CJ Stroud. But as important as he was, they got the guy that really was important to me, and that's the head coach, the former middle linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles, and before that, the Houston Texans, DeMeco Ryans. He essentially, quote, came back home, close quote, and now he has won two AFC South championships, and has a playoff victory under his belt. You see, Mr. Kraft, I think that's what you wanted. You wanted that. And then you saw in Washington a team that won 4 games the year before, and they were such a mess. They were in such a chaotic state. And then they got settled with the right ownership group, and then the right head coach with Dan Quinn, who, yes, he has previous head coaching experience. He took another team to the Super Bowl. But you were looking at that record. Oh, this team went, Houston, they went from 3 wins to 10. Oh, wow. The Commanders, they went from 4 wins to 12. Why is it we still are in the mud? Well, because your team sucks. Your team is not talented. I'm sorry. I mean, from 1 to 53, your team is too young. And then you're trading talent away. I mean, Matthew Judon is one prime example. And he helped out the Falcons as much as he could, but the Falcons basically ran out of gas, especially on the defensive end. You had talent on that team and you traded them away because you believe the Patriot way was, well, we'll just get people who think are marginalized and we'll raise their level of play. We'll make them believe they are better than they are. And if you get 53 guys who believe they're better than they are, we should have victories. Well, that's great. But some of those players have to be talented. Some of those players have to be respected for what they can do on the field. And if you chop out from underneath the leader of the team because you have him inherit crap and he can't do much with it, what? I used to be in hip hop and I used to write songs, and I was in the studio with a burgeoning rapper, and he had a line, and it fits perfectly here. Mr. Kraft, you wanted Jared Mayo to dress up a turd in a tux. Well, you know what they say, and this is what he said. He said, man, you can dress a turd in a tux, but it's still a piece of. That's what you did. You wanted Jerry Mayo to dress a turd up in a tux. But Mr. Kraft, your team is still a turd. Deal with that. And then you can probably get better. Until then, find your guy. Oh, you already found your guy. You found your guy before you had Jerry Mayo sign a dotted line. You wanted Mike Vrabel all this time. And you wasted a good prospect in a year. Congratulations, Mr. Kraft. We learned the Patriot way all right. The Patriot way is to win with impossible measures. And you were at the top of that impossible measure list.
As long as it's one. It's great. I love it. I hope it actually is recording. Listening to it.
Playmaker saying, preach. Thank you, my brother. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate that. All right, that is all the time we have for this episode of Total Football Talk. Now, if you want to reach my brother Drew all you have to do is hit these social media platforms. You can go to _media on Instagram, _media on X or Twitter, _Sir on TikTok, and of course, Sir Toba Media on YouTube. And if you want to reach me, just go to flowcode.com /page/host Cole Johnson. That is flowcode.com /page/host Cole Johnson. Well, I thank you for liking. I thank you for subscribing. I thank you for hitting the notification bell. And I thank you for commenting. And the comments today were absolutely wonderful. And please comment below in the replay, because we want to hear what you have to say. We believe that we have the pulse of you, but we know that better by interaction. So please give that to us. Well, for Drew Willingham, I'm Cole Johnson here, say, imparting as we always do. In life, just like a tackle, keep your head up. And always remember, you got to play until the whistle blows. And as my partner will always say, and stay safe out here on these streets. See you next week.